Rain drizzles down the cobblestones of Manchester's northern quarter as Friday night begins. The pubs are filling, laughter spills onto the streets, and another weekend of possibility unfolds across northern England. Tonight, we're diving deep into the intimate lives of people in cities like Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, Newcastle, and Sheffield. Beyond the football chants and industrial heritage, these cities pulse with complex realities of love, sex, relationships, and social change that rarely make the headlines. This is Northern England stripped bare, honest, and unfiltered. Northern England has always been defined by its working-class roots, its industrial past, and its fierce local pride. Manchester gave birth to the Industrial Revolution. Liverpool was a global port connecting continents. These cities built empires, then watched those empires crumble. The post-industrial decline left scars, poverty, unemployment, deprivation. But it also forged resilience, creativity, and a particular approach to life that's simultaneously pragmatic and passionate. Understanding relationships and sexuality here requires understanding this context, this history, this identity. Let's start with how people meet. Dating apps have revolutionized the landscape across Britain, but nowhere more dramatically than in northern cities. Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, and Plenty of Fish dominate. Walk into any pub on a Friday night, and half the people there are simultaneously scrolling through profiles. The apps have democratized dating in some ways, making it easier to meet people outside your immediate social circle. But they've also created new anxieties and frustrations, the paradox of choice, the gamification of romance, the ghosting culture where people simply disappear without explanation. Northern England has a particular dating culture shaped by its social geography. Cities here are densely packed with neighborhoods that have strong identities. In Liverpool, whether you're from Toxteth, Anfield, or the Wirral matters. In Manchester, Moss Side, Salford, and Didsbury represent different worlds. These local identities influence who people date, where they meet, and how relationships form. There's still a tendency toward geographic loyalty, toward finding someone from your area, someone who understands where you come from. The pub remains central to northern dating culture. Unlike London, where dating often happens in expensive restaurants or wine bars, Northern England still does much of its courtship in pubs. The first date is likely at a local, maybe followed by a curry or a chippy if things go well. There's less pretension, less performance. People value authenticity, directness, honesty. A Mancunian won't waste time with elaborate games or mysterious behavior. If they like you, they'll tell you. If they don't, they'll tell you that too. This straightforwardness can be refreshing or brutal, depending on your perspective. Sex on the first date is common and largely destigmatized in Northern England's urban centers. The old rules about waiting 3 dates or playing hard to get have largely evaporated among younger generations. If there's mutual attraction and consent, why wait? This casualness about sex reflects broader British attitudes, but is particularly pronounced in working-class Northern culture where pragmatism trumps propriety. That said, women still face the double standard. A man who sleeps around is a lad. A woman who does the same risks being called a slag. This hypocrisy persists despite decades of feminism. Contraception access is generally good across the UK through the National Health Service. Condoms are available free at sexual health clinics. The contraceptive pill, IUDs, implants, and injections are provided without charge. This accessibility is something many countries envy. However, recent years have seen concerning trends. Some areas have closed sexual health clinics due to budget cuts. Waiting times for appointments have increased. Young people report feeling judged when seeking contraception, particularly in more conservative areas. The consequences are predictable. Rising rates of sexually transmitted infections, particularly chlamydia and gonorrhea among young people. Manchester and Liverpool have particularly high STI rates compared to the national average. Multiple factors contribute. High population density, significant student populations, active nightlife scenes, and frankly, people having sex without consistently using protection. The normalization of casual sex isn't matched by consistent safe sex practices. Dating apps facilitate quick hookups with strangers. But conversations about sexual health often don't happen. People are embarrassed, worried about killing the mood, or simply don't think about it until it's too late. Let's talk about abortion, a topic that remains politically contentious across Britain. Northern Ireland only decriminalized abortion in 2019, decades behind the rest of the UK. In England, abortion has been legal since 1967 under certain circumstances. Women can access abortion up to 24 weeks of pregnancy if 2 doctors agree that continuing the pregnancy would risk physical or mental health. In practice, this means abortion is available on request, though the legal fiction of requiring medical approval remains. The majority of abortions happen before 10 weeks, often through medication taken at home. Northern England has adequate abortion access through NHS services, though provision varies by area. Manchester and Liverpool have dedicated clinics. Smaller towns may require traveling significant distances. The COVID pandemic actually improved access by allowing telemedicine consultations and home administration of abortion pills. This convenience reduced barriers and improved privacy. However, anti-abortion protesters still gather outside some clinics, harassing women seeking care. These protests are deeply distressing for women already making difficult decisions. The cultural attitude toward abortion in Northern England is generally pragmatic. It's not celebrated. But it's not stigmatized the way it is in some countries or regions. Most people view it as a necessary medical service. Women who have abortions don't typically face social ostracism. They might not broadcast it, but they can confide in friends without fear of judgment. This relative acceptance reflects Britain's secular culture and long history of legal abortion. That said, individual experiences vary, and some women struggle with guilt or grief, particularly if they come from religious backgrounds. Pregnancy outside marriage is completely normalized in Northern England. In fact, the majority of births in many northern cities occur outside marriage. This represents a dramatic shift from previous generations when unmarried pregnancy was deeply shameful. Single mothers are visible in accepted parts of communities. The government provides financial support through various benefits, though these have been cut significantly under austerity policies. Teen pregnancy rates have declined dramatically in recent years, partly due to better sex education and contraception access, but Northern England still has higher rates than the national average. Marriage itself has changed radically. The average age of first marriage in the UK is now around 33 for women and 35 for men, up from the early 20s in the 1970s. Many couples live together for years before marrying, if they marry at all. Cohabitation is completely normal and carries no stigma. Young people view marriage as optional, something to do eventually, perhaps, but not necessary for commitment or even for raising children. This shift reflects economic realities as much as cultural change. Weddings are expensive. Saving for a house deposit takes priority. Marriage feels less urgent when you're already living as a committed couple. When people do marry, Northern England weddings have their own character. They're often big, loud affairs with large guest lists. The reception features an open bar, a DJ playing classic Northern soul or indie rock, and dancing that gets increasingly messy as the night progresses. Speeches are funny and slightly inappropriate. The bride's father might get emotional. The best man will definitely tell embarrassing stories. There's less formality than traditional Southern English weddings, more emphasis on having a good time than following etiquette. But marriage rates are declining, and divorce rates tell an important story. About 42% of marriages in England and Wales end in divorce. The rate is slightly higher in Northern England, correlating with factors like economic stress, young marriage age, and educational levels. Divorce has been legal and relatively accessible in Britain since the 1960s, and cultural attitudes have shifted dramatically. Divorced people aren't failures or pariahs. They're simply people whose relationships didn't work out. Many divorce, heal, and eventually marry again. The introduction of no-fault divorce in England and Wales in 2022 was a significant reform. Previously, unless you'd been separated for years, you had to prove your spouse was at fault through adultery, unreasonable behavior, or desertion. This requirement forced couples to make accusations and assign blame, making divorce more acrimonious. No-fault divorce allows couples to simply state that the marriage has irretrievably broken down, reducing conflict and legal costs. It's a pragmatic reform that acknowledges the reality that sometimes relationships just end. Domestic violence is a serious issue across Britain, including Northern England. Approximately 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men will experience domestic abuse in their lifetime. These statistics likely underestimate the true prevalence because many victims never report. Northern England has particular challenges: lower funding for support services, refuge spaces consistently full, and cultural factors that may discourage reporting. In tight-knit working-class communities, there can be pressure to keep problems private, to not bring shame on the family, to protect the man who's basically a good lad when he's not drinking. Alcohol plays an enormous role in Northern England's relationship culture. For better and worse, British drinking culture is intense, but northern cities have a particular reputation. Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle are famous for their nightlife, their pub culture, their ability to drink heavily and keep going. This isn't just weekend behavior. The after-work pint is routine. Social life revolves around pubs. Dating happens in pubs. Relationships begin and end in pubs. This creates an environment where alcohol is deeply intertwined with romance and sex. The positive side, alcohol lubricates social interaction, reduces inhibitions, makes it easier for shy people to approach potential partners. Many relationships begin with a drunken kiss in a club or pub. The negative side, consent becomes murky when both parties are intoxicated. Alcohol fuels domestic violence. It contributes to risky sexual behavior. The line between a fun night out and a problematic relationship with alcohol can be thin. And Northern England has high rates of alcohol-related harm. Drug culture intersects with dating and relationships in complex ways. Britain has significant recreational drug use, particularly among young people in cities. Cannabis, cocaine, MDMA, and ketamine are widely available. In northern cities, drug use happens across all social classes, though the drugs of choice and context vary. Middle-class professionals might use cocaine at house parties. Working-class youth might smoke cannabis and take pills at raves. Dating someone who uses drugs is common enough that it's not automatically a deal-breaker for many people. However, serious addiction remains devastating. Northern England has been hit hard by opioid addiction, particularly heroin. Post-industrial towns with high unemployment have addiction rates that tear communities apart. Addiction destroys relationships. Families, lives. Partners of addicts face impossible choices: stay and enable or leave and feel guilty. Children grow up in chaotic households. The cycle of addiction and poverty is difficult to break. While this isn't specifically about dating and sex, it's part of the social fabric that shapes relationships in affected communities. Mental health has become a crucial conversation in Britain, and it profoundly affects relationships. Northern England has high rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide, particularly among men. The cultural expectation that men should be tough, stoic, and not talk about feelings contributes to this crisis. Men suffer in silence, self-medicate with alcohol or drugs, and sometimes make tragic decisions. In relationships, unaddressed mental health issues create disconnection, conflict, and pain. The good news is that attitudes are shifting. Campaigns like "It's okay to not be okay" are breaking down stigma. More people are seeking help. The LGBTQ+ community in Northern England has made enormous progress but still faces challenges. Manchester's Gay Village is one of the most famous LGBTQ+ districts in Europe, centered around Canal Street. It's a vibrant, visible community with bars, clubs, cafes, and pride celebrations. Liverpool and Leeds also have active LGBTQ+ scenes. Same-sex marriage has been legal in the UK since 2014, a reform that felt momentous for many queer people. The legal equality is real and significant. Socially, acceptance varies dramatically by neighborhood, age group, and background. Urban, educated, younger people are generally accepting. Rural areas and older generations can be hostile. LGBTQ+ people in northern cities can live openly, hold hands in certain neighborhoods, access queer spaces. But homophobic and transphobic violence still happens. Queer people learn to read environments to know where they're safe and where they need to hide. Dating as an LGBTQ+ person in Northern England is easier than it's ever been historically, but still comes with considerations and concerns that straight people don't face. Dating apps have been particularly transformative for LGBTQ+ people. Grindr, Her, and other queer-specific apps allow people to find partners and community without needing to physically go into gay bars or clubs. This is especially valuable for people in smaller towns, for people who aren't comfortable in bar environments, or for people who aren't yet ready to be publicly out. The apps have their problems: excessive focus on appearance, hookup culture that can feel superficial, but they've undeniably expanded possibilities. Transgender people in Northern England navigate particularly complex challenges. While legal protections exist and medical transition is possible through the NHS, social acceptance is inconsistent. Trans people face discrimination in employment, housing, and public spaces. In the dating world, many experience fetishization or rejection based on their trans identity. The recent moral panic about trans rights has made the environment feel less safe. Yet trans communities persist, support each other, and increasingly find allies among younger generations who view trans rights as obvious human rights. Sex work exists throughout Northern England, from street-based sex work in Liverpool and Manchester to online escort services to survival sex exchanged for drugs or shelter. The legal status in the UK is complicated. Selling sex isn't illegal, but soliciting, pimping, and brothel keeping are. This means sex workers themselves aren't criminals, but the activities around sex work are criminalized. This creates a dangerous limbo. Street-based sex workers are extremely vulnerable to violence, exploitation, and arrest. They're often women with addiction issues, mental health problems, or desperate poverty. Higher-end escort work happens more discreetly, advertised online, occurring in private residences or hotels. These sex workers have more control and safety, though they still face legal ambiguity and social stigma. Organizations advocate for full decriminalization of sex work, arguing it would improve safety and allow sex workers to access police protection and legal recourse. Opponents argue it would increase exploitation. The debate continues while sex workers navigate dangerous conditions. Student culture deserves particular attention because cities like Manchester, Liverpool, and Leeds have enormous student populations. Universities bring tens of thousands of young people from across Britain and internationally. Student life has its own relationship culture. Hookup culture is pronounced. Relationships often feel temporary. Experimentation is common. Students are living away from home for the first time, exploring identity and sexuality, often drinking heavily. This creates an environment of sexual freedom but also vulnerability. Consent culture on university campuses has become a major focus. Universities run campaigns teaching students about affirmative consent, how alcohol affects consent, and how to intervene when friends are in risky situations. These efforts have made a difference, but sexual assault remains a serious problem. Many students experience some form of sexual harassment or assault during university. Reporting systems have improved, but many survivors still don't report due to fear, shame, or skepticism that anything will be done. The culture of lad culture on campuses, particularly around sports teams and certain social groups, promotes problematic attitudes toward women and sex. Laddish behavior treated as harmless banter can create environments where misogyny, homophobia, and sexual aggression are normalized. Feminist student groups actively resist this culture, organizing protests, education campaigns, and support services for survivors of sexual violence. The tension between traditional lad culture and feminist activism plays out daily on Northern England's university campuses. Class dynamics significantly influence relationships in Northern England. Britain remains deeply class-conscious, and northern cities reflect this. Middle-class and working-class young people might party in the same areas but often don't mix romantically. They attend different schools, aspire to different careers, speak with different accents, and have different cultural references. Cross-class relationships happen but can face challenges around money, family expectations, and worldviews. A middle-class student dating a working-class local might struggle to bridge these cultural differences. Economic inequality shapes relationship possibilities in concrete ways. Young people struggling with precarious employment, 0-hours contracts, and unaffordable housing often delay serious relationships or marriage. Financial stress strains existing relationships. Couples argue about money. Dreams of buying a house or having children feel impossible. Economic insecurity creates relationship insecurity. This isn't unique to Northern England, but the region's relatively high poverty and unemployment rates make it particularly acute. Let's discuss the positive aspects of Northern England's relationship culture. There's a warmth and loyalty here that's genuine and valuable. Northern people value authenticity, humor, and resilience. In relationships, this translates to partnerships built on friendship, laughter, and mutual support. The romance might not always be Instagram perfect, but there's something solid about it. People look after each other. Extended families remain close, providing childcare, emotional support, and practical help. Community ties are strong. The music and cultural scenes in northern cities create spaces for connection. Manchester's music heritage, from Joy Division to Oasis to the 1975, provides a shared cultural language. Liverpool's Beatles' legacy and continuing music scene does the same. These shared cultural experiences create bonds. Going to gigs together, discussing music, dancing at festivals becomes relationship-building activity. The creative energy of these cities attracts artistic, passionate people who form intense relationships. Food culture has evolved dramatically in Northern England, and it affects dating. Cities now have diverse restaurant scenes. Indian, Chinese, Middle Eastern, Italian, and increasingly trendy brunch spots and independent cafes. Foodie culture gives couples activities beyond pubs and clubs. Cooking together at home has become a popular date activity. partly out of economic necessity as eating out becomes expensive, but also as an intimate shared experience. Northern England's traditional foods, the Sunday roast, fish and chips, the full English breakfast, are comfort foods shared in relationships. Let's talk about infidelity, which remains a common relationship challenge. British culture has a complicated relationship with cheating. It's condemned morally, but happens frequently. Studies suggest around 20% of Britons have been unfaithful at some point. Infidelity rates are similar across regions, but the context varies. In Northern England's close-knit communities, affairs can have particular consequences. Everyone knows everyone, word spreads quickly. The social fallout can be intense, yet affairs happen anyway, driven by dissatisfaction, opportunity, alcohol, or simple human weakness. Dating apps and social media have made infidelity easier to initiate and harder to hide. People create secret Tinder profiles or message old flames on Instagram. Suspicious partners can snoop through phones, finding evidence. The ease of emotional and sexual connection outside the relationship has complicated monogamy. Some couples have responded by opening their relationships, practicing ethical non-monogamy or polyamory. This remains relatively uncommon but is growing, particularly among younger, more educated urbanites who question traditional relationship structures. The future of relationships in Northern England is uncertain and evolving. Younger generations are questioning inherited assumptions about relationships, marriage, gender roles, and family structure. They're more accepting of diversity, more willing to reject relationships that don't serve them, more focused on individual fulfillment. This can look like selfishness to older generations, but might simply be healthy boundary setting. The challenge is balancing individual needs with the compromises necessary for partnership. Economic factors will continue shaping relationship patterns. If housing remains unaffordable, young people will delay partnering and parenting. If job insecurity persists, relationships will remain precarious. Social policy matters. Access to childcare, parental leave, healthcare, and education all affect people's ability to form and maintain relationships. Britain's recent political choices, austerity, Brexit, increasing inequality have made life harder for many people, with ripple effects throughout society, including in intimate relationships. Climate anxiety is even affecting relationships among young people. Some question whether it's ethical to bring children into an uncertain future. This isn't abstract philosophy, it's shaping real decisions about having kids. The existential dread of environmental crisis adds another layer of anxiety to the already complex questions of partnership and family. Yet humans are resilient and relationships persist. People continue falling in love, taking chances, building lives together despite uncertainty. Northern England's particular character, its humor, resilience, and community spirit will continue shaping how people love and connect. The specifics change, the apps and social norms evolve, but the fundamental human desires for connection, intimacy, and belonging remain constant. If you found this exploration valuable, subscribe for more honest documentaries about society's hidden realities. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. What surprises you about Northern England's relationship culture? What resonates with your own experience? These conversations matter. Behind all the statistics and trends are millions of individuals navigating love, sex, and relationships as best they can. Understanding the social forces shaping their choices helps us see each other with more empathy and clarity. Northern England, like anywhere, is complicated, flawed, and beautiful, and the people living, loving, and struggling there deserve to have their stories told honestly.